Hey, beautiful soul. You're listening to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast, your weekly dose of fertility wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach. This is your go-to podcast for all things to naturally nourish your fertility, embody womb healing, and reclaim your feminine power to accelerate your path to pregnancy. My expert guests and I will be having intentional conversations to discuss the many facets of a thriving, fertile foundation, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as women on our journey to motherhood. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Georgianne Douglas. She's a pharmacist and a Mediterranean health coach who helps busy professionals and parents create easy strategies for eating healthy Mediterranean style. And today we'll be discussing the Mediterranean way of eating and preventative medicine as it relates to perinatal health. So welcome, Georgianne. I am so excited to have you on, and I would just really love to dive in and just touching on your background and where the inspiration and passion came from regarding the Mediterranean diet.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Katie, so much for having me here. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I think as moms and you and I as healthcare professionals, it's so great to share what we've learned and then what we've experienced too, being moms. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I still live now. And I grew up in a traditional Greek family. Parents, grandparents. I'm one of 4 kids, all in the same household, eating delicious Greek food all our lives. And I went on to school and went to pharmacy school and really wanted to make an impact in healthcare, and reached a point where I realized that my patients were just returning to the pharmacy to stay on medication, and large corporate healthcare structures, retail pharmacies, were just counting metrics and were following adherence rates and compliance and, just checking up on numbers and reports. And as the pharmacist in a community space and that one-on-one with my patients, I just felt like there was more that I could do that didn't fit into that 1-minute conversation at the consultation window about a statin medication or just whatever maintenance medication was being picked up. And the patients said something like, oh, my doctor told me my cholesterol is a little bit high. I got to start this medication. And he said, start some diet and lifestyle changes, but tell me what the side effects of this are. And I felt like I could just talk about basic level of lifestyle changes, but really tell them about side effects. Whereas my passion is, let's do a deep dive into that lifestyle habit changing and talk about how you can use food as medicine to prevent this worsening of cardiovascular events or to prevent disease from coming into play. So when I got to the point, actually after having children, after my second maternity leave, returning to work and realizing that I wanted the time flexibility, that ability to control my schedule, to be a present mom and to be mindful of my time away from my kids. I wanted to have more purpose-driven work. And that has shifted me into studying functional medicine and holistic wellness. And my passion is my culture and delicious Greek food. And so Mediterranean diet or way of living plus healthy lifestyle, and offering that as consultation services to my patients in a health coaching space is what I do now.
Awesome. I love it. And I can completely relate because I used to work in retail pharmacy as well. And I'm assuming you probably maybe did like MTMs or medication therapy management. And a lot of it was really just following up. Are you taking
boxes? Yeah.
Are you taking your diabetes medication? But there really is such a small window in the pharmacy where you can really take that deep dive and really educate them, to be able to make lifestyle changes, dietary changes where they could potentially even be able to eliminate the need for medications at all. And don't get me started on the advice that they even get from their doctors or lack
Right.
thereof. Like, it's just so I completely resonate with your desire to want to do more, because I feel like that's a big reason why we wanted to become a pharmacist to
Mm-hmm.
begin with, is to help people. So that's amazing that, motherhood is kind of giving you that spark or that little extra
Right.
push to kind of step into something that makes you feel more fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also feel that it's like a beautiful example to show for our children too, to really be able to do something that makes you feel happy and like you're actually making an impact.
Yes. And just for me to be happier too, so that I can be present with them the
Mm-hmm.
way that I want to show up as a mom, and just to feel excited to work in healthcare in a way that I can work in preventative medicine and lifestyle change rather than, just being part of the broken healthcare system.
Yeah, exactly. So for anyone who's listening, I know that the Mediterranean diet, it's almost like one of those things that you've heard of so many times. You've probably read about it in magazines, but some people might not really know what that means, what that entails. So I would love to kind of hear your take on that.
Yeah, definitely. So it gets its name, the Mediterranean diet, because of course it comes from the eating habits and lifestyle of the people who live in the countries around the Mediterranean Sea. And this is something too, another part of me, Katie, is that I love travel, and not only my Greek, and I've gone back to Greece many times, but I've had the luxury of traveling to Italy and Croatia and Spain and Egypt and France. And so all of these Mediterranean countries are like my soul. So, what is the Mediterranean diet? I don't even like to use the word diet. I prefer to say style of eating or eating habits or lifestyle, because it really is, those pillars of the Mediterranean diet are about sharing, enjoying food with conversation around the table, relaxing after the meal. We all know in Spain, they have a siesta hour that helps with digestion and, stress. And the Mediterranean diet is about consuming mostly fresh fruits and fresh vegetables, whole grains, nuts, a lot of olive oil, which is what I love to cook with, and just love olive oil, lean sources of animal protein, reduced amounts of red meat and saturated fats, and then very few processed and refined sugars. But there are some sugars involved in Mediterranean style of eating. We all know our Greek baklava is full of
Mhm.
sugar, but those are saved for special occasions like holidays and eaten in small amounts. It's not, a daily bowl of ice cream every night after dinner. That just doesn't exist.
Mhm.
In the Mediterranean, they would snack on fresh fruit in the evening. So that's a little bit about the Mediterranean diet.
Okay. So I feel like, I don't know, when I think of it, I feel like, is fish a really, really big part of it?
Definitely. So that's your lean source of protein. And that's something in our household. My husband and I eat a lot of fresh fish or just baked fish, and we will pair it with a vegetable on the side.
Mm.
And meats, like we said, there are limited amounts of meats, mostly because those countries around the Mediterranean, they were getting all of their food, and they still do, from the earth. And so raising animals and preparing them for slaughter, they don't have a lot of meat as frequently as we have them in our convenient lifestyle that we have in the Western world, in America, where things are just, industrialized, and anything that you want is available at any moment in the grocery store. So meats are less frequent, again, usually more for holidays or just once a week on the weekends. And then everything is really focused on healthy fats, omega-3s, and a lot of vegetables, seasonal food, whatever comes out of the earth,
Mhm.
and a lot of fish produce.
Okay. I think my next question, it would be, in America, we have access to fruit from like all over, but what would be fruits that would be more like native to the Mediterranean areas?
Mm-hmm. Fruits native to the Mediterranean is pretty much anything, maybe not some like East Asian or some South American fruits, but definitely peaches, plums, figs,
Mm,
watermelon, all kinds of melons. Really, a lot of fruit and citrus. They grow in dry, arid regions, and that's a lot of the Mediterranean is dry and arid. And another thought around the Mediterranean diet is it's not a very limited diet. That's why most of, healthcare providers recommend for cardiovascular health benefits for patients to start a Mediterranean diet. Not only does it do so well to reduce inflammation and improve cardiovascular health, it's one of the easiest to follow because it's not a diet. You don't really have to follow rules. Basically, are you eating whole food that came from the earth and God, or are you eating things that man made?
mm-hmm,
If it's whole food and it came from the earth, it's the Mediterranean diet.
mm-hmm,
So I like to think of it that way versus did this vegetable grow in a Mediterranean country? Can I eat it or not? It's
mm-hmm.
more of a mindset of eating foods that came out of the earth in their less processed form or no processed form. That's the Mediterranean way of eating.
Beautiful. And I love how you mentioned it has to do with like sharing your food and just enjoying it with your
Exactly.
family and your friends. Because I think that that is like another take on like just mindful eating, positive, it's cooked with love, made with love, and it's shared, amongst family and friends, which I think is so different than like the busy lifestyle that maybe you experienced in retail as well, when we're like
Mm-hmm.
standing and just kind of like having to eat our lunch so quickly because
Right.
you didn't even have a lunch, or you're just, you had to eat really fast. So that's another beautiful take on like the Mediterranean style as well.
100%. It's not just what you're eating, it's how you're eating it. And that means slowing down. And you mentioned mindful eating. And these are some of the things that I do with clients when I work with them, mindful eating exercises, and just really being conscious of what you're doing in the moment and slowing down and savoring flavors and taking your time and chewing more. And that happens when you're sitting at a table with people you love and you're talking at the same time. You're eating slower
Mhm.
and you're able to digest. And that digestion starts with the saliva in your mouth and the chewing. And then being around people that you love while you're eating also makes you happy. And so then you have the endorphins and your serotonin and all those happy hormones in the brain. And so all of those are helping with your overall health as well. So a big part of it is those philosophies behind the Mediterranean diet, eating in community with other people, eating moderation, and then eating variety. So that means like a colorful palette, not just all vegetables, but one vegetable and one piece of grilled chicken and the same thing always, but eating in variety, eating seasonal, eating what's coming out of the earth, and it's changing all year long.
Mhm.
But it's what's available at the time.
Great, awesome. And you briefly touched on, I think, a couple of benefits like the anti-inflammatory and then
Yes.
cardiovascular health. Are there any other like really big main benefits of the Mediterranean diet?
Yes, and I do want to share these, especially with your audience, with women who are around prenatal, perinatal, postpartum, and just what it can do for fertility and for our hormone health. One of the biggest things is because the Mediterranean diet is rich in nutrients, it's just going to help your overall reproductive health. But more specifically, it helps regulate hormones and blood flow from these heart healthy fats. So these omega-3s, like we talked about in olive oil. And another thing I do with clients is like swapping this for that. And one of them that I do often is a pantry clean out, and let's look at what oils are we cooking with. Is it olive oil? Is it coming from a source that's a reputable source? And is it through cold pressed and extra virgin, or is it something that has been blended with other oils and just vegetable oil? What is vegetable oil? Where does it come from? broccoli oil. I mean, vegetable oil is just a highly processed, nothing oil. But other health benefits of around fertility with the Mediterranean diet can be the anti-inflammatory properties, and that's huge for fertility and creating a healthy environment. So reducing inflammation in the body, that creates a more favorable environment for conception. And then a last one that I want to mention too is those omega-3 fatty acids that we're talking about. They support healthy egg and sperm development. So this is something you've talked about this a lot, Katie, on this podcast, not just the female and her role in conception, but the male as well. And that fats, those healthy fats supporting healthy egg and sperm development. And some of those healthy fats could be like walnuts, salmon, olive oil, sardines, Brussels sprouts. Those are just to name a few.
Yeah. It's funny because I was looking up studies on nutrition and the benefits for fertility, and pretty much all of them that ever talked about nutrition, they all were referencing the Mediterranean diet and how beneficial it is for fertility, and just speaking on like the antioxidants and the nutrients and then the anti-inflammatory properties. It really is like so impactful for both the male and the female. We want to make sure that we're working on both, like you had mentioned. So that's really, really cool. I would love to kind of dive into maybe more of like a personal story. I know that you had used, this Mediterranean style of life. You have been your whole life anyways, but throughout one of your pregnancies, and I know that that was able to help you.
Yes, definitely. I'll share a little story here. For someone, who's been eating healthy almost all my life, really, just because of the baseline of what the family I was raised in and the luxury that I had to be around such healthy food, I've carried it on into adulthood. And in my first pregnancy, I made it all the way to, I don't remember which trimester do you do that glucose tolerance test where you drink the sugary drink. And I didn't pass the test, and my blood sugars were not in normal ranges. And I took it as a shock. I'm a pharmacist, I'm a healthcare provider. What do you mean I have gestational diabetes? I counsel patients on diabetes. I eat fish all the time. And, that moment for me was just an eye-opening experience about blood sugar control. And that's another thing that the Mediterranean diet does well with its high fiber and healthy fats. It helps regulate those blood sugars. But in pregnancy, we know that the pregnancy hormones are so irregular or different from where you are before being pregnant and after being pregnant that my OBGYN said, just calm down, Georgianne. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just your hormones have really affected your blood sugars. And so I went on this journey of how can I address these blood sugars, because my diet wasn't really that different or that bad. Definitely tweaks that I made were adjusting where my sugars are during the day. So that's something that I help clients with through too, this journey of, but I'm eating, a healthy breakfast. Well, let's talk about the order of the foods that you're eating in your breakfast. For example, for me, while I was pregnant, I love a pastry. I love a croissant. But if I'm going to eat something that might have sugar in it, like a pastry, I need to eat the savory part first and then eat the sugary part afterwards. So savory before sweet. And then also the time of day that I was eating my sugars, I would be more symptomatic and feel hypoglycemia if I was eating sugars very early in the morning or very early at night. So eating my sugars in the middle part of the day. And then not having large chunks of time without a snack or a meal. Like you mentioned, in retail pharmacy, you're standing for a 12-hour shift. And if I wasn't pregnant, I would, take one bathroom break and have one lunch break that was short. But that did not fly when I was pregnant. So I had to make some adjustments and use these, Mediterranean nuts and walnuts and pistachios and pecans and eat those as my snacks with dried fruit like raisins and apricots and dark chocolate. And I would pepper those into the day and eat my 3 meals a day and make myself take a break from standing at my shift to sit down and eat the snack or eat my lunch and really be more mindful of my patterns of eating. Whereas non-pregnant me could push those limits a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you had mentioned to me you were actually able to control your blood sugars, right? By making these changes.
Definitely. I made these changes. I followed up with all of my appointments and I was not medicated. I didn't have to go on any insulin. I didn't have to take any oral meds. I was able to control my blood sugars and feel much better symptomatically, less dizziness spells from hypoglycemia, less GI upset from hyperglycemia. And I even, made it through the labor and delivery where they were checking my blood sugars and everything happened to work out from my habits and from my mindfulness in what I was eating and where my sugars were throughout the day. And then, with gestational diabetes, the moment you deliver the baby, the hormones change. And so the diabetes goes away. And it did. It went away like that. And then I got pregnant again, a year and a half later. And I started these habits, being more mindful of my body from day one, rather than waiting until the glucose tolerance test to tell me what my blood sugars were. And I had a much more comfortable pregnancy. And again, I had gestational diabetes in both pregnancies because it's very common, almost 90%. If you're going to have it in one, it will happen again in the next one. And same thing, I was able to control it medication free.
And how were both babies? Because I know that they'll typically test them if mom has gestational diabetes. Were their sugars good?
Their sugars were perfect. There was no concern there. And still, I'm very blessed. I have 2 very healthy boys and very healthy pregnancies other than the blood sugar. I'm very comfortable and I loved it. I loved the process and very blessed to have healthy kids.
Amazing. Amazing. And did postpartum look any different for you? Like, did you add or like focus on anything maybe more so than you would have pre-pregnancy or during pregnancy?
Definitely hydration. I focused more on continuing eating snacks, healthy snacks, just to keep up my milk supply and to keep myself hydrated and for strength and energy because your sleep is deprived. So eating more snacks and hydrating. And I have a system at home where I create a water station. I always have a glass of water close by and I had a carafe to refill that water close by. And with breastfeeding, I was very regimented with that. And of course, after that goes away, I was slowed down with it. But, hydration, I think, was one of the biggest things postpartum and continuing the snacks and then incorporating back into my lifestyle, which includes, that little glass of red wine. Had to get back into that too.
Yeah. So actually, I would love to dive into that. So I know that wine is part of that, obviously in moderation, but what is like quote unquote accepted in amount, the type of wine, like what does that look like if someone wants to follow the Mediterranean lifestyle?
I think back to summers that I've spent in Greece and how is alcohol incorporated into the lifestyle there. And a lot of it is just table wine, red wine served with a meal, literally at the table, poured into small glasses, but really it's small amounts. And it's for enjoyment of the flavor of your food paired with the wine. And a lot of it is local from what's there. So you're not going to a restaurant and flipping through a wine menu and picking out a certain wine. It's just whatever is the house wine. And, there's a phrase, what grows together goes together. So where the grapes are growing, what other foods grow in that region goes well with those grapes that grow in that region. So I think if you're drinking red wine that's local and in small amounts and with other people, then it's acceptable. It's not drinking to get drunk or drinking for a feeling. It's more just to enhance the happiness of the people that you're around. And how do I incorporate that into life here in America when I'm not, having a beautiful summer in Greece? My husband and I enjoy a glass of red wine with dinner in the evenings, but maybe not every night of the week, or if we just save it for the weekends. It just depends on what's going on in our lives, but definitely moderation and paired with food.
Yeah, I was gonna say eating it with food, I think is
Mm-hmm.
very different than, or drinking it, not eating it with food,
Yeah,
um, than drinking on an empty stomach, so to say.
exactly.
Yeah. So it's just overall, it just seems like everything is extremely intentional,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It is. That's where it's a lifestyle. It's a mindset. And that's the type of transformation that I help my clients go through. It's not just, let me give you meal plans or let me give you recipes, because we can all, Google a Mediterranean recipe. It's more of preparing your environment and the meal preparations and hacks in the kitchen and how do you make it work to cook this type of delicious Mediterranean healthy food
Mm-hmm.
for busy professionals and parents that have, limited time to put dinner on the table for the family and for themselves. So those are the types of things that I work through with clients to take this idea of how, people in the Mediterranean and Italy and in Greece live their life, but how do we incorporate that into real world today? That's the transformation that I help my clients get to.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips for anyone who does lead a really busy lifestyle or they have, a large family to be able to kind of like save on time, but
Mm-hmm.
also be able to eat in such a way?
Yeah. One of my biggest tips is use your freezer. So whenever you're preparing a delicious meal, it often is, going to take some time. Well, double the recipe. And if you're going to pull out all the ingredients and get your kitchen dirty and make, I don't know, some veggie patties or a pasta dish that has a chicken with it or a fish with it, create something that you can freeze and prepare and help improve your speed for the next time you make it. For example, the other night, my husband and I made a dish that included like a Parmesan encrusted chicken breast, and the chicken breasts are huge. So I cut them all in half and I only used half of the pack. And the rest of it, I went ahead and marinated it with salt and pepper and oregano and put it in between parchment paper and froze it. So the
Mm-hmm.
next time I'm ready to serve grilled chicken to my kids or I need to cook it for home, I go into the freezer and I pull out my already marinated little patties that are individually in between parchment paper to make the process faster than starting from zero.
Mm-hmm. Love it. That's a great tip. Thank you. So is there anything else that you want to touch on about this lifestyle that maybe we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite talking topics is about how we can be the catalyst for change in healthcare. We see that there are gaps in the way the healthcare system is over dependent on pharmaceutical medications and this idea of a pill for every ill. Well, this is something I'm so passionate about. How can we teach ourselves to make the habit changes to live healthier lifestyles holistically, whole body systems, and use preventative lifestyle changes with, walks outside, mindfulness, and exercise, and feeding our bodies with food as medicine. That is my biggest passion, and my message for the audience really is to incorporate those easy breezy Mediterranean way of living into our lives today using food as medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed completely. Love it. So I know you have a freebie and just kind of talking about your offer, how you work with clients, if you just want to speak to that and where the audience could really connect with you more as well.
Yes, I would love to share that. So I do have a free giveaway. It is a free download and it's called Mediterranean Herbs for Health. And basically, I go through my top favorite Mediterranean herbs and what is their health benefit? What's the link there? And then I have in the download there's a way you can click on a recipe that I've made recently that you can see what recipe you can use with oregano or rosemary or thyme or coriander. And so those are in the free download. And to get that, I will share it with Katie, and it will be hopefully in the show notes. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah.
And then also you can just find me on Instagram. That's where I hang out the most, Dr. Georgianne Douglas. And just send me a DM on Instagram and I will connect with you and get you a link over to that free download for Herbs for Health. You can also find me on my website, drgeorgiannedouglas.com. And I would love to hear about your health journey and how I can help you incorporate this relaxed Mediterranean lifestyle into your busy life.
Amazing, amazing. And I'm definitely going to check out that free download and all the herbs and things that you recommend. I think that is a valuable asset to have, because I think including spices and herbs in your diet can be really fun and creative, and you can try new things. And then obviously there's the health benefits as well.
And a part that I forgot to mention there in that free download, the second half of it is how to incorporate these herbs into your pantry. And what I use with my clients is a pantry clean out. So, the best way to prepare yourself for success is to prepare your environment. So if we look inside our pantry and it's just cluttered with a bunch of, processed sodium included, preservative spices, we want to get those things out, and we want to use fresh herbs as our spices and really clean out our pantry with what kind of foods are in there, so that when it is time to cook, you can reach the things that are the healthiest ingredients for your dish. And then also, to let your audience know, if they're interested in working with me, I do have a program that is a 3-month health coaching program. It's all virtual. We meet once a week virtually. And then if you're enjoying the transformation and all the things that we're doing together, I do have a 6-month where we can, I'm not going to stop working with you after 3 months, but I do have a 6-month program as well. And then I offer a VIP day with my clients too. So those are some fun ways to work with me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing just your experience and all of your knowledge about the Mediterranean lifestyle and way of living. And I think that it's a really beautiful representation of how we can take care of ourselves and slow down and be a little bit more intentional with our health. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you.
Likewise, I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share with your audience. Thank you for this, Katie. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.